Chapter 1. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It whispered against the windows of a worn-out house perched on the edge of Pine Hollow, a forgotten town buried in the hills of northern Montana. The kind of town where the roads barely got paved, and secrets had more room to grow than crops ever did. Inside, a woman sat curled up on the edge of a couch that had once been white. Her name was Carla Dunn, and tonight marked 22 years since her brother and niece vanished without a trace. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every June 6th, she followed the same ritual. She'd light a candle on the window ledge, play an old VHS tape she kept hidden beneath her bed, and watch her brother's voice flicker through static like he was trying to call home from the past. Tonight was no different. The tape began to roll. A man in his late 30s with a stubborn beard and tired eyes stood in front of a gas station pump, waving at the camera. "Come on, Mia, say hi to Aunt Carla," he called. A small voice off-screen giggled, and a little girl no older than 6 popped into view, holding a juice box in one hand and a stuffed fox in the other. Carla leaned in closer, like if she got close enough, she could reach into the screen and grab them. She hit pause. The rain thickened. From the hallway, an older voice broke the silence. "You still watch that thing?" Carla turned to see her mother, Judy, wrapped in a frayed shawl. Her silver hair looked like it had once been carefully brushed, now left to memory. "Yeah," Carla said softly. "Every year." Judy stepped into the living room and sat beside her daughter. "It's not going to bring them back," she whispered, but her voice cracked like she didn't believe her own words. Carla didn't answer. She looked at the candle flickering beside the window, the flame trembling like it was unsure it should keep going. Then the phone rang. They both froze. It was 11:46 p.m. No one called this late anymore. Not since Judy had stopped answering and Carla had stopped expecting. She picked up the receiver slowly, her heart thudding in her ears. "Ms. Dunn," a voice said. "Yes. This is Deputy Wade from the Sheriff's Office in Bonneville County. I'm sorry to call so late. We found something this evening, something we think you need to see." Carla's voice shrank. "What did you find?" "I'd rather not say over the phone," the deputy replied gently. "But it involves a vehicle and a stuffed animal discovered in a drainage basin off Highway 83. We think it might be related to your brother's case." Carla's blood ran cold. She hadn't heard the name Daniel Dunn spoken by law enforcement in over a decade. Not since the case went cold and they stopped returning her letters. Not since she realized the world had moved on. "Where should I go?" she whispered. "We'll send a cruiser. 20 minutes. She hung up and turned to Judy. Her mother's eyes were already filled with tears. "What did they find?" Judy asked. Carla stared at the flickering candle. The wax had nearly reached the base. "A car," she whispered, "and something that used to belong to Mia." Chapter 2. The cruiser pulled up in silence. No sirens, just the low hum of tired tires rolling over wet gravel. Carla stood by the porch, soaked from the knees down, her coat thrown hastily over pajamas. Her mother hadn't spoken another word after the call. She just stood in the hallway, arms crossed tightly over her chest, staring at the closed front door like it might fall in at any moment. The deputy stepped out. He was younger than she expected, maybe early 30s, with a face that hadn't yet learned how to wear tragedy. His name tag read Wade. "You're Ms. Dunn?" he asked gently. Carla nodded. He held the door open for her. "It's a bit of a drive. You can ask me anything along the way." Carla slid into the passenger seat, still clutching the worn scarf Mia had left behind 22 years ago. She had never been able to throw it out. It still smelled like lemon shampoo, or maybe that was just her imagination playing a cruel trick. They drove in silence for a long while. The town faded behind them, swallowed by fog and the shadows of pine trees, until all that remained was road and rain and the rhythmic squeak of windshield wipers. Wade finally spoke. "Do you remember what kind of car your brother drove?" "A white Ford Bronco," she said instantly. "'88, his pride and joy. He used to call it the Ghost." Wade's mouth twitched. Fitting name. Carla turned toward him. "Why?" "Because we think we found it." Her breath caught. Wade glanced at her. "We weren't even looking. It was just dumb luck." A county crew was clearing out a washed-out section of road near the old turnoff by Devil's Drop. They pulled out a twisted guardrail, and underneath. He paused. Underneath was a vehicle, mostly buried. No tags, no plates. Just a cracked rear window with a child's toy wedged inside it. A little fox. Carla didn't respond, but she held the scarf tighter. They reached the county line as the sky began to fade from black to bruise purple. Morning was threatening to arrive, but the sun had no intention of shining today. Almost there, Wade said. We've got it under a tarp for now. And there's something else. What? I think you should see it yourself. The car turned off the highway onto a muddy side road. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind ahead, sectioning off a curve that had long ago stopped warning anyone. A tow truck sat idling beside the drop, a steep ravine carpeted in wet leaves and secrets. As Wade parked, another deputy lifted the tarp slowly. And there it was, the Ford Bronco, or what was left of it. The roof had collapsed inward like a crushed can. Moss covered the hood, like nature had been trying to erase it for years. One of the doors hung open, crooked, rusted, like it had been forced shut for decades and then suddenly kicked wide again. Carla approached slowly, the rain numbing her arms, her breath misting in front of her. Her feet sank into the mud with every step. The passenger window had been shattered, glass littering the inside like broken stars. But there, stuck behind the back seat, was a faded plush fox, orange once, now the color of rust. Its left eye was missing. She reached for it with trembling hands. "Don't touch it yet," Wade said softly behind her. "We've got crime scene techs coming to photograph everything." Carla lowered her hand. She stared into the back of the Bronco, heart pounding. Every part of her screamed to pull that toy out and hold it. But she stayed still. "What else did you find?" she asked, her voice hollow. Wade exchanged a glance with the other deputy. "In the glove compartment," he said finally, "we found a Polaroid." Carla looked at him. Of a man and a girl. Her throat went dry. They're standing in front of a diner. The girl is holding that same fox. The man is wearing a fishing vest. "Do you think your brother ever wore one?" "Yes," Carla whispered. "Every trip." Wade nodded. "That's what I figured." He reached into a sealed evidence bag and pulled out the photo. It was faded and water-damaged, but she could still see them, Daniel and Mia, standing in front of a place she didn't recognize. But something was wrong. Carla leaned in. Mia wasn't smiling. In fact, she looked like she'd been crying. And Daniel wasn't looking at the camera. His eyes were turned to the left, staring at something, or someone just out of frame. "What diner is that?" she asked quickly. Wade shook his head. "We don't know. The photo's not labeled. No timestamp. No name on the building. We'll try to enhance it, get something more." Carla's gaze lingered on the background. Just behind the two figures was a shadow, a human shape, distorted by time and light. It was impossible to tell who it was, but it made her skin crawl. She looked away. Wade sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "We're reopening the case. Your brother, your niece, someone tried to make sure they were never found." Carla's hands were trembling. "You think someone did this?" He didn't answer directly. Just said, "The brake lines were cut. That Bronco didn't go off the cliff by accident." Carla stared into the woods, into the silence, into the place where time had stopped 22 years ago. And for the first time in decades, she whispered something she hadn't dared say aloud. They didn't just disappear, they were hunted. Chapter 3. The scent of gasoline still lingered in her nose. Carla sat in the sheriff's office with the Polaroid spread out in front of her, illuminated by a dim desk lamp that flickered every few seconds, just enough to keep the shadows moving along the walls. It was nearly 5 a.m., and the town was beginning to yawn itself awake. She hadn't slept. She didn't want to. Across from her, Deputy Wade stirred a fresh cup of coffee with the wooden end of a pencil. He hadn't left her side since they returned from the ravine, as if afraid that whatever they'd found might follow them back. "I already called your mother," he said gently. "She's okay. Said she's going to wait at your place." Carla nodded absently, her eyes fixed on the photo. "Can I ask you something?" Wade ventured. "Sure. Why didn't the case go anywhere before? Back then, I mean. 22 years. That's a long time for a vehicle to be hiding just miles away." Carla blinked slowly. Her voice was distant when she finally spoke. "There was a storm that weekend. A bad one. Washed out 2 roads, flooded the bridge. The local cops thought maybe Dan and Mia got caught in the flood, and were swept away. But they didn't find the Bronco, or tire tracks, or... She trailed off. They gave up, she finished, her jaw tightening. Said maybe he drove off. Said maybe he had debts. That maybe he didn't want to be found. Wade frowned. Did he? No, Carla snapped. He was my brother. He was strict, yes. Paranoid sometimes. But he loved that little girl more than life. He wouldn't just disappear. She picked up the photo again and studied the shadows in the background. That blurry figure, just standing there, watching. Can I take this? She asked. Wade hesitated. Officially, it's evidence. But he reached into a drawer and handed her a clean copy, freshly printed on photo paper. You can take that. Thanks, she said quietly. Then her eyes narrowed. Do you have an archive room? Wade looked surprised. Yeah, in the back. Why? I want to see the original report. My brother's case file. He hesitated again, but something in her tone made him nod. All right, follow me. They descended a narrow staircase at the back of the station. The air grew colder, heavier, and the walls turned from drywall to old stone. Like this part of the building remembered a different time. The basement smelled like dust, mildew, and old paper. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Wade unlocked a metal door and flicked on another light. The archive room was cramped, with filing cabinets stacked like silent guards against every wall. A rolling ladder stood in one corner. A dehumidifier hummed quietly beside a row of labeled boxes. Case files are alphabetical by surname, he said. Dunn would be top row, far cabinet. Carla nodded, already moving. She found the folder within minutes, thin, bent in places, like no one had opened it in years. She sat cross-legged on the cold floor and flipped through the pages slowly. Missing Persons Report. October 6, 1999. Filed by Carla Dunn. Subjects, Daniel Dunn, age 39, and Mia Dunn, age 6. Last seen, 3:45 p.m., leaving Granger's General Store. Headed toward Lake Kira. Carla's eyes scanned the witness statements. Familiar names from her childhood leapt out. Mrs. Harner from the bakery. Old Lou from the gas station. Most of them remembered nothing. A few said Dan looked off, or in a hurry. None of it meant anything, until she reached the final page. Her fingers paused. There was a handwritten note, barely legible, from an officer named Sheriff Alden Trask, now long retired. Anonymous call came in October 8th. Male voice. Said, "You're looking in the wrong direction." Dunn didn't vanish. He was taken. Caller hung up. No ID. No follow-up. Carla sat there in the silence, the weight of those words crushing her lungs. He was taken. Wade. She called up the stairs, her voice hollow. Did anyone ever trace this call? He reappeared in the doorway, eyebrows furrowed. What call? She held up the page. Anonymous tip. Said my brother was taken. 2 days after they disappeared. He came down slowly, reading over her shoulder. I've never seen that before, he muttered. That's not in the digital records. Carla stood up. I want to know where that call came from. Wade hesitated. Carla. No. Listen to me. Her voice sharpened. If someone called back then, if someone knew something, and the sheriff ignored it. He raised his hands. All right. I'll pull the phone records from that day. Might take time, but I'll dig. She nodded. Good. Just then, a voice crackled over the radio clipped to Wade's belt. Dispatch to Deputy Wade. We've got something. You might want to hear this. Wade grabbed the receiver. Go ahead. A woman just called in. Said she found something strange in her attic. Says it might be connected to the Dunn disappearance. Carla's heart skipped. Who? She whispered. Name's Mrs. Eliza Marnes. Lives out by Blackwood Road. Says she's cleaning out her late husband's old office. Found a lockbox. Inside was an old camera and a roll of undeveloped film. Wade and Carla locked eyes. Tell her we're on our way, Wade said. Chapter 4. The sun was beginning to rise when they pulled onto Blackwood Road. Fog clung low to the fields like breath held too long. The kind of quiet hung in the air that only happens when something has just ended or is about to begin. A lone mailbox leaned sideways at the end of a gravel drive, its flag still up, red and waiting. Wade glanced over. You sure you want to come in? Carla didn't answer. She just opened the door and stepped into the mist. At the end of the drive stood a small farmhouse, its roof patched with tin, its porch sagging under the weight of potted plants long dead. A screen door creaked open as a woman stepped out. She was in her 70s, maybe older. Her hair was bone white, tied back with a faded ribbon. Her eyes, sharp and pale, didn't waver as they watched the car approach. "You the ones from the sheriff's?" she asked, her voice raspier than gravel. Wade stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Deputy Wade. This is Carla Dunn." Eliza Marnes nodded slowly. "You're Daniel's sister, then?" Carla stiffened. "Yes. You knew him." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened the screen door wider. "Come in." The house was colder than outside. The living room smelled like old paper and something faintly metallic, rust maybe. A single photo sat on the mantel, a man in military fatigues, broad-shouldered, unsmiling. "My husband, Harvey," Eliza said without looking back. "He served 2 tours overseas, came back with a limp and secrets. Spent most of his time locked in that attic after he retired." She led them to a narrow staircase. Each step creaked like it remembered every fight, every silence, every year of wait. "At first I thought it was just junk," she continued as they climbed. "But then I found this metal box. Locked. Heavy. And I remembered something." She turned to Carla. "He used to get up at night, sometimes after storms. Said the wind brought back things. Once he came downstairs soaking wet. Said, the woods are never quiet. Not really. Something's always watching. I thought he was sleepwalking. But..." She trailed off as they reached the attic door. "Sometimes I wonder if he wasn't." The attic was dim, lit only by a slanted skylight smeared with dust and pine needles. In the center of the floor sat a gray lockbox. Beside it, a single yellow envelope. "I broke the lock this morning," Eliza said. "Didn't feel right waiting." Carla stepped forward. Inside the box was a small 35mm camera, old but still intact. Next to it sat 3 items: a rolled-up film canister, a compass with a cracked face, and a necklace. Carla stared. The necklace was a small silver locket, shaped like a star. It had belonged to Mia. Carla had given it to her for her 6th birthday. "Oh my God," she whispered. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it from the box. Eliza watched carefully. That was inside an envelope marked River Curve. There was a map, too. Just a sketch, really. "I burned it. It scared me." Wade knelt beside the box, picking up the film. "I can drive this to the lab in Columbia," he said. "They've still got a darkroom and gear for this sort of thing." Carla didn't answer. She was staring at the locket, thumb rubbing over the latch. It clicked open. Inside was a photo, faded and water-stained, but unmistakable. Mia smiling, missing teeth, holding the same stuffed fox. But this time, there was someone standing behind her. A tall figure, half-shadowed. Only part of his face was visible, enough to see that he wasn't Daniel, and his hand rested on Mia's shoulder. Carla's breath caught. "Who is that?" she whispered. Wade looked over and frowned. "Could be the same guy from the diner photo." "I don't think so," Carla said. "This one looks younger." She traced the outline of the man's face, chilled by something she couldn't name. Eliza suddenly crossed her arms. "There's something else you need to know." They both turned to her. "My husband used to talk in his sleep. Names. Places. One time, he said, 'Tell that girl to stop looking. He'll hear her.' Another time, they were meant to vanish. The hollow takes what it wants." Carla's blood turned to ice. Wade stood up slowly. "The hollow." Eliza nodded. "That's what they used to call the deep woods past the ravine. A place the loggers wouldn't go. Said there were sounds at night, laughter when no one was there. People used to go missing, even back in the 60s. They said it was the land. Others said it was men, hiding out, running from something." She looked directly at Carla. "Your brother went into the hollow." Carla swallowed hard. "And someone didn't want him to come back." Chapter 5. The red light glowed softly in the back room of the Columbia Photo Lab, casting the space in a blood-colored haze. The old technician, Marvin Keller, moved with slow precision, his hands steady despite the years. His white hair stuck out in tufts from under a knit cap, and the sleeves of his denim shirt were rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms speckled with ink stains and age spots. Carla stood beside him, silent, barely breathing. Across the room, Wade leaned against the wall, watching through narrowed eyes. He wasn't used to this kind of quiet. Out in the field, silence usually meant something was wrong. But this silence, it felt like something was waiting. Marvin dipped the film strip into a tray of developer and began to swish it gently back and forth. "Hasn't been used in 20 years, you say?" he muttered, half to himself. "Could be cracked. Could be blank. Could be ghosts." Carla swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" "Film's funny," he said. "It doesn't lie. It doesn't change. But it only shows you what was already there." He slid the strip into the fixer and waited. The seconds stretched. The red glow pulsed. And then, he lifted the strip gently from the tray and squinted through his magnifier. His breath hitched, almost too faint to notice. Wade stepped closer. "What is it?" Marvin didn't answer right away. He clipped the strip up against the backlight and stepped aside. Carla moved forward and saw them. 6 photos, each grainy, imperfect, but clear enough to shake the bones in her body. Frame 1, the woods dark and blurred, like someone had taken the photo in a hurry. In the bottom right corner, the edge of a child's backpack. Frame 2, a figure walking through trees. Tall, male, carrying something wrapped in what looked like a blanket. The face wasn't visible. Frame 3, a clearing. A girl sitting on a stump, her back to the camera. Mia. Carla could tell by the posture, the way she used to slump when she was tired or afraid. Next to her, something metallic gleamed on the ground. Frame 4, close-up of a car. The Ford Bronco, its driver's side door open, and behind it, barely visible in the shadows, someone else. A man, not Daniel. Leaner, short hair, staring directly at the camera. Frame 5, the same man again, now walking toward the camera. Frame 6, black. Carla's hands trembled as she touched the edge of the strip. Where were these taken?" she asked. Marvin shrugged, his voice barely a whisper. "You'd know better than me." Wade stepped closer, his voice tighter now. "That man, do you recognize him?" Carla stared at the 4th frame again. The shadowed face. That unsettling direct stare. It looked familiar, not in a way that she could name, but in the way bad dreams feel like memories. "I don't know," she murmured, "but I've seen that face somewhere before." Wade pulled out his phone and snapped high-resolution shots of each frame. "I'll run these through the state database. Facial recognition, if we're lucky. At the very least, maybe someone local will know him." Marvin lowered the strip back into the tray for washing. "Whoever took those pictures," he said quietly, "they weren't trying to document a memory. They were trying to leave a message." Carla turned to him. "What kind of message?" He looked at her, eyes heavy with something more than age. That something terrible happened, and they knew it wouldn't stay buried forever. On the drive back, Carla didn't say much. She just clutched a printed copy of Frame 3 in her lap, the image of Mia sitting alone in that clearing, and stared out the window as the pines blurred past. Wade finally broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "When did you stop believing she might still be alive?" The question hit her like a hammer, blunt, sudden, impossible to ignore. Carla exhaled slowly. "I didn't," she said. "I tried to. Everyone told me I should. They called it acceptance. Said it was healthier to move on." She shook her head, voice flat. "But I couldn't. Not because I'm hopeful. Because I'm scared." Wade glanced at her. "Of what?" "That she is alive," Carla whispered. "That she's out there somewhere, and waiting for someone to come find her." They drove the rest of the way in silence. When Carla got home that night, her mother was waiting on the porch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Judy didn't ask any questions, just opened her arms and let her daughter collapse into them like she was 6 years old again. "I saw her," Carla whispered. "She was in the photo. She looked tired, small." Judy said nothing, just rubbed her daughter's back slowly, over and over again. Later, after Carla had fallen asleep on the couch with the photo still clutched in her hand, Judy slipped into the kitchen. She pulled out an old metal tin from the back of the pantry, one that hadn't been touched since 2001. Inside was a collection of items she'd sworn she'd never show Carla. Items she had hidden the day after Daniel disappeared. And at the bottom, wrapped in wax paper, was a postcard, unsent, and signed. Just 5 words, scratched in blocky letters. Don't follow. He watches everything. Judy stared at it for a long time, then slowly returned it to the tin, and locked it away again. Chapter 6. 2 days later, the rain returned. But this time, it didn't feel like weather. It felt like warning. Carla stood at the edge of Pine Hollow Forest, her boots sinking slowly into the mud. Behind her, Deputy Wade unloaded the gear from his truck: GPS, first aid, two-way radios, a digital map printout, and a backpack with bottled water and protein bars. "This is where the Bronco was pointed," he said, unfolding the map and tracing a thick, red line with his finger. According to the original report, the road curved away from this direction, but tire tracks lead straight into the trees. No one followed them. "Because of the ravine," Carla murmured, remembering the drop-off. "They assumed the car veered and fell." Wade nodded. Or someone wanted them to think that. The woods were thick here, too thick. Trees leaned in like nosy neighbors, branches clawing at the sky like they were trying to scratch it open. The path ahead was barely visible, buried under decades of leaves and silence. Carla pulled the printed photo from her coat pocket, the one with Mia on the stump. In the background, the clearing, the slanted pine, the half-buried rusted object behind her. That clearing had to be in these woods. She folded the image and tucked it close to her chest. "Are you sure about this?" Wade asked, slinging the backpack over one shoulder. "Because I need you to be honest with me, Carla. Once we're in, the signal's gonna fade. GPS can get scrambled. You feel anything's wrong, anything at all, we turn back." "Understood." Carla met his eyes. "I've lived with silence for 22 years. I can live with ghosts. But not secrets." Wade didn't smile, but his grip on the compass tightened. They stepped past the first tree line, and the world changed. The temperature dropped the moment they entered the woods. It wasn't just cooler, it was different. Still air, no birdsong, no rustling. Just the crunch of boots on fallen branches and the soft echo of breathing. Every step forward felt like crossing into someplace that didn't want to be known. Wade kept checking the map and glancing up. There should be an old trail here, something from the logging days. But it's like the ground swallowed it. Carla turned in a slow circle. "Do you feel that?" He raised a brow. "Feel what?" She hesitated. "Like we're being watched." Wade scanned the trees. "I always feel that out here. Nature doesn't blink." They continued another half-mile. Then they found it. The clearing. Exactly like the photo, the crooked pine, the mossy stump, even the rusted piece of metal half buried in the earth. Carla froze. "This is it," she whispered. Wade knelt by the metal, brushing away wet leaves. "Looks like the corner of a car door. White paint, maybe? Could have been part of the Bronco." Carla approached the stump. Her hands trembled. Mia had been here, had sat here. Suddenly, she noticed something else. A carving in the tree trunk. Faint, but still visible. M+D. October 99. Her breath caught. Mia and Daniel. They left this. Wade stood beside her. Maybe they stayed here a while. Took shelter. But that doesn't explain what happened next. As if in response, a gust of wind tore through the clearing. The first wind they'd felt since entering the hollow. And with it came sound. A soft, metallic rattle. Wade turned. Somewhere in the distance, something was moving. Not a deer. Not a squirrel. Something bigger. And it wasn't running. It was walking. He reached for his sidearm. "We're not alone." Carla's pulse spiked. She scanned the trees. Nothing. Just shadows. Then another sound. A low, steady clicking. Rhythmic. Familiar. Wade narrowed his eyes. Do you hear that? Carla's face went pale. Yes. I know that sound. That's the noise my brother's camera made when it rewound film. They looked at each other. And then a whisper. Soft. From the trees. A child's voice. Carla. She spun, eyes wide. Mia. No answer. Just a giggle. Then silence. Wade pulled out his radio. Dispatch, this is Deputy Wade. Do you read me? Over. Static. He turned to Carla, jaw clenched. We're going back. No, she said, voice trembling. She's here. She's close. Wade stepped forward, blocking her path. We go back. Now. We regroup. Bring a team. But Carla was already walking toward the voice, toward the space between the trees where the whisper had come from. She didn't see the tripwire until it was too late. There was a sudden, violent snap, and the world exploded in light and sound. A flare trap. Bright, searing magnesium fire erupted, blinding them both. Wade tackled her to the ground just as a second pop echoed from somewhere above. A net, crude rope-woven, dropped from the branches and barely missed entangling them. Carla was gasping. What was that? Wade dragged her up. Someone doesn't want us here. This isn't just the past hiding anymore. Someone's guarding it. They stumbled back toward the clearing, but the way they had come was gone. The path had vanished. Branches seemed closer, denser, almost like the forest had shifted. Or closed. Carla turned to Wade, her face pale. We're not leaving, are we? He didn't answer. But they both knew the truth. They were in it now. And whatever lived in the hollow knew they were here. Chapter 7. The compass spun. Not wildly. Not erratically. Just slowly, like it wasn't confused but uncertain. Wade tapped the glass face again. Nothing. Still drifting. Like it can't lock onto north. Carla looked around the clearing. The wind had stilled again, and the silence had returned, thick, pressing, unnatural. Her ears buzzed with the kind of quiet that made you question if you were still awake. Do compasses do that? She asked, her voice thin. Wade shook his head. No, unless we're near something magnetic, or something's interfering. He tried his radio again. Dispatch, come in. This is Deputy Wade. GPS offline. Compass acting erratic. We need assistance. Coordinates unknown. Repeat, unknown. The reply was the same as before, static. He exhaled sharply. Okay, here's what we do. We mark our location, double back toward the stream we crossed earlier, and track west. Eventually, we'll hit the fire road. Unless it moves, Carla said. Wade looked at her. What? This forest, she said slowly. It doesn't feel still. It feels like it's watching, shifting. You're letting your mind get ahead of you, he replied, but his tone lacked conviction. Then a crunch. Carla spun. To the left, about 20 yards beyond the clearing, something had moved. Not a branch. Not an animal. Footsteps. Deliberate. Heavy. They waited. The woods responded with stillness. And then, from somewhere beyond the trees, a voice. Hoarse, distant male. You shouldn't be here. Wade raised his gun. Who's there? Identify yourself. No response. Carla took a trembling step forward. Who are you? Do you know what happened here? To Daniel Dunn? To Mia? Another silence. And then quietly. He tried to leave. That's why he lost her. Carla's heart slammed against her ribs. Wade shouted again. Come out. Hands where I can see them. Another crack of underbrush, this time closer. Wade motioned for Carla to get behind him. He took slow, cautious steps toward the sound. And then the voice came again, softer, sadder. He made a deal. But he didn't keep it. So the hollow kept her. Carla pushed past Wade before he could stop her. Who are you? She screamed into the woods. There was a pause. Then, "You know my name." She froze. Her skin prickled. Because she did. The voice, low, with an edge of gravel, was familiar. "Who?" she whispered. A shape emerged from the trees. He was older now, maybe late 60s, with deep lines carved into his face and eyes that burned beneath a low-brimmed cap. He limped slightly, wearing a jacket that might have once been part of a uniform. Wade lowered his gun, not out of trust, but confusion. "Who is he?" he asked. Carla's voice caught in her throat. "That's Sheriff Alden Trask, the man who closed my brother's case." The old man didn't smile, didn't blink, just stared at her. "I warned your mother," he said softly. "Told her to let it go. But she wouldn't. She kept digging. Then you started. What did you do?" Carla whispered. Trask stepped closer. "I didn't do anything. That's the point. I tried to stop it. But some doors don't close just because you want them to." Wade stepped in. "Mr. Trask, you're interfering with an active investigation. We need you to come with us." Trask laughed, short, bitter. "You think you're in charge here?" He gestured to the forest around them. "No one's in charge here. Not anymore." Carla stepped forward. "You said he made a deal." "Who?" "My brother." Trask nodded. "There was a man back then. Called himself Elias Brandt. Nobody really knew where he came from. Had a cabin deeper in the hollow. Said he was a healer or a finder. Depends on who you asked." He took a breath. "People came to him when they wanted something back. A lost item, a lost person, a piece of their past. He'd find it, but he didn't work for free." Carla's voice dropped to a whisper. "He wanted payment." Trask nodded again. "Not money, not even blood. Memory. He said it was the only thing that mattered. Said if you give up a piece of yourself, your memory of someone you love, he could use it to pull them back." Wade stared. "That's insane." Trask didn't argue. "Maybe, but people went to him. Not just strangers. Locals. And they came back different. Forgetting birthdays. Names. Whole people. And some never came back at all." He looked at Carla. "Your brother went to him." Carla's knees felt weak. "That's not possible. He never believed in that kind of thing." "No," Trask said. "But he believed in Mia. She was sick. You know that, don't you?" Carla blinked. "She had asthma. But she had something else," Trask interrupted. "Something deeper. Dan thought he could fix it. Make a trade. Get her better. And for a while it worked." He pointed to the ground. "This clearing? It was a boundary. You crossed it. You were in Brandt's land. And Dan went past it." He paused, the wind stirring the trees like restless sleepers. "But he didn't hold up his end of the deal." "What was the payment?" Wade asked. Trask turned to him. He was supposed to forget her. A silence stretched. Carla's breath hitched. But he didn't. Trask nodded slowly. He ran instead. Took her. Tried to disappear. But you can't outrun something that feeds on memory. He turned to Carla. "And now it wants yours." The forest howled. Branches shifted above. And from somewhere deeper in the hollow, a low, melodic voice echoed through the trees. "Carla." Chapter 8. The voice calling her name didn't sound like Mia anymore. It was softer, older, like memory fraying at the edges. Wade instinctively raised his weapon again, but Trask shook his head. "No use," the old sheriff said. "Bullets won't stop what's out here. It doesn't bleed." Carla turned to him. "Where's the cabin?" Trask didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted past her, toward a trail so narrow it barely qualified as a path. Just a thin break in the trees, thick with fog. "You follow that until the birds stop singing," he said. "Then keep going. Will you take us there?" He looked at her like a man who'd already been buried once. "I already did." And just like that, he turned and walked away, vanishing into the woods without a sound. Wade cursed under his breath, watching the spot where Trask had disappeared. "What the hell was that?" he muttered. "Is he crazy?" Carla shook her head, eyes locked on the thin trail. No, just scared. She stepped forward. Wade followed. The deeper they walked, the stranger it became. The fog didn't burn off, even as the sun rose higher. It thickened, grew teeth. Trees grew closer, gnarled and twisted like veins in the sky. Moss crept up their trunks in impossible shapes, faces maybe. Or maybe that was just the mind playing tricks, trying to make sense of a place that refused to make sense. There were no birds, no rustle of squirrels, not even insects. Just the sound of their boots crunching damp leaves and the distant whisper of wind that never quite touched their skin. And then the smell hit them. Iron, charcoal, mold. Wade pulled his shirt over his nose. Jesus, what is that? Carla didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was tightening, her stomach churning. Then, just ahead, the trail widened. A clearing, round and silent. And in the center of it, hunched like a forgotten monument, sat a cabin. It looked ancient, more like it had grown there than been built. Wood blackened by time, roof sagging, windows so smeared with grime they reflected nothing. Ivy strangled the edges. The door hung open just slightly, like it had been waiting. Wade stepped in front of Carla and drew his weapon again. If something moves, you run. Got it. She nodded, but didn't listen, because her feet were already moving. The air changed the moment she stepped onto the porch. It was thicker here, like breathing through cloth. The boards creaked under her weight, and the door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, the cabin was small, cramped, and wrong. There were no signs of life, no furniture, no warmth, just walls covered in carvings, hundreds of them, symbols she didn't recognize. Spirals, jagged stars, runes shaped like keys or knives. In the center of the room was a table, and on it a box. Small, wooden, with a single word etched into the lid. Carla. Her blood froze. Wade stepped beside her, gun raised. How? How would anyone know your name? She reached out slowly, hands trembling, lifted the lid. Inside was a cassette recorder, old, dusty, and a photo. She picked it up. Her breath caught. It was her, maybe 8 years old, standing next to Daniel at a 4th of July picnic. She remembered this day. The fireflies. The way Daniel had lifted Mia onto his shoulders to watch the fireworks. But there was something wrong about the photo. She wasn't smiling. In fact, she didn't look like she even knew the picture was being taken. And behind her, in the shadows of the trees, was a figure, barely visible, tall, watching. She dropped the photo. Wade leaned down and hit the play button on the cassette recorder. For a moment, static. Then her brother's voice. Carla, I don't know if this will reach you. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it out. I'm sorry. I didn't want this. I only wanted to save her. Her hands clutched the edges of the table. There's something in these woods. It calls itself Elias, but that's not his name. He doesn't ask for money. He asks for pieces. Of who you are. He says memory is the only true currency. And I gave him mine. I gave him my memories of Mia's sickness, her pain. And she got better. But then she started forgetting too. Forgetting me. Her mother. Her own name. I tried to run. But you can't outrun something made of forgetting. It follows. It erases. I tried to hide her. I buried her locket under the ash tree by the river curve. I thought maybe, if no one remembered her, she'd be safe. But now I hear her calling me from the trees. And I don't know if it's really her. Or if it's him. Pretending. Carla, don't come looking. Don't let it know you remember her. Click. Silence. Then the recorder began playing again, but in reverse. Wade slammed the stop button. Carla collapsed into the chair. I remember, she whispered. I remember everything now. Her birthday. Her favorite cereal. The way she used to hum in her sleep. She looked up at Wade, eyes wide with horror. What if that's what it wants? What if the more I remember her, the more I feed it? He shook his head. No, that's not how this works. You're not going to forget her. Not now. Not after this. But somewhere outside the cabin, the wind had changed. A new sound drifted in. Footsteps. crunching, slow, coming closer, and then a knock on the cabin door. 3 times. Soft, rhythmic. Wade raised his weapon again, but Carla was already turning toward the door, her body moving like it wasn't hers. She knew that knock. She had heard it every night before Mia would sneak into her room when she had a nightmare. Knock, knock, knock. Then the little voice. Carla, I'm cold. Chapter 9. Carla's breath turned to vapor in the cabin's dead air. Wade grabbed her wrist before she could take another step. Don't open it, he said sharply. You don't know what's out there. But she was already trembling. Not from fear, from recognition. That voice, faint, threadbare, childlike, it struck something deep in her. A memory she didn't realize she still carried. Mia, standing barefoot on the old wooden floor of the hallway, blanket wrapped around her, clutching the stuffed fox with both hands. Carla, she used to whisper, voice tiny and scared, I'm cold. Carla looked at the door again. 3 more knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Wade pointed his gun. If that thing comes in, I shoot. Carla nodded, but her heart was drowning in static. Her hand reached out slowly. The door creaked open, and standing there was Mia. At least, that's what it looked like. She hadn't aged a day. Same soft curls, same pale skin, same wide, sleepy eyes. She wore the faded yellow raincoat Carla remembered from a stormy summer afternoon in 1999. Her shoes were muddied, and her fingers trembled at her sides. She blinked. Carla. Carla's knees gave out, and she dropped to the cabin floor. Wade didn't lower his gun. This isn't possible. But Carla wasn't listening. She reached out, her voice cracking. Mia, is it really you? The girl nodded slowly, but her eyes, something about them was wrong. Too still, too quiet, like mirrors with nothing behind them. I got lost, Mia whispered. You didn't come. Carla's hands were shaking. She held them open. Come to me, sweetheart. Come here. Mia stepped forward, but her movements weren't quite right. Too precise, like someone wearing her skin had rehearsed this moment 100 times. Wade stepped between them. Stop right there. Mia looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes, then smiled, and every tooth in her mouth was perfect. Too perfect. Carla stood back up slowly. Something was shifting in her brain, a cold crack through the ice. Do you remember what you called the fox? She asked gently. Mia blinked. What? The stuffed animal. You used to give it silly names. You'd change it every week. A long pause. Then, Foxy. Carla's throat closed. Wrong. That was the first name, from when Mia was 3. But the last one, the one she whispered every night before she fell asleep, was Captain Maple. Not Foxy. This thing wasn't Mia. Wade saw it at the same time Carla did. Back up, he said, stepping toward the girl. But she just smiled wider. You remember me wrong, she said sweetly. You always did. And then her voice shifted, grew deeper, older. That's why I came back. She lunged. Carla screamed. Wade fired. The cabin exploded in noise and splinters as the bullet passed through the girl's shoulder, or what looked like her shoulder. Because she didn't fall. She didn't bleed. Instead, she turned to Wade and opened her mouth far wider than a human mouth should stretch. From her throat came a sound, not a scream, not a voice. A static howl, like every radio in the world crying at once. Carla clutched her ears and fell to her knees. The air grew thick, pressing against their chests. The carvings on the cabin walls began to glow, pulsing with dull amber light. The girl's body flickered, like an old TV struggling to hold its signal, and then shattered into a cloud of smoke and ash. Gone. Just like that. Silence returned. Wade was gasping for air, his weapon trembling in his grip. What the hell was that? Carla couldn't speak. Her heart was racing so fast it hurt. She stood, stumbling toward the center of the cabin, where the tape recorder still sat, now warped and steaming slightly. And then, she saw the journal. It hadn't been there before. Leather-bound, singed at the edges. Carla picked it up. Inside, The first page was written in her brother's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you remember. And if you remember, he knows you're here. She turned the page. Elias Brandt doesn't take lives. He takes stories. He feeds on what we treasure most, our memories of love, of joy, of the people we swore we'd never forget. If you find the place where memory ends, you'll find Mia. Outside, the fog began to swirl. Shapes moved in it now, not people. Not animals, but echoes. And one of them spoke. Her voice was thin, distant. "Auntie, do you remember my song?" Chapter 10. They didn't run. They couldn't. The moment Carla stepped outside the cabin with the journal clutched against her chest, the hollow changed. The fog thickened into a wall. Trees stretched taller. Shadows deepened into eyes, watching, blinking slowly, as if waking from a long, bitter dream. Wade whispered, "We're not in the same woods anymore." He was right. The forest had become something else. And all around them, shapes stirred. Not solid, not yet, but growing clearer with each step Carla took. Whispers brushed past their ears. "Do you remember me? I was your teacher. You held my hand once. I was there when she was born." Memories. Thousands of them. Not just hers. Not just Daniel's. Everyone's. All trapped here. Fragments, names, birthdays, lullabies, the exact weight of grief in a mother's arms. And at the center of it all, something waiting. Something old. Something hungry. They found the ash tree just as the journal described, gnarled and black, half swallowed by the earth. Its branches reached upward like burnt fingers, and at its base, barely visible beneath the moss and roots, was the place Daniel had marked. Carla knelt. She dug with her bare hands, dirt under her nails, breath sharp and ragged. Finally, her fingers scraped metal. She pulled out a small, rusted tin. Inside was the locket, but not the one she remembered. This one had a second half, a twin clasp. Carla opened it, slowly, cautiously. Inside were two photos, Mia, and a woman's face she didn't recognize. But she did. Something in her heart buckled, because it wasn't a stranger. It was her, not as she looked now, but older, different, with streaks of silver in her hair, lines at her eyes, wearing the same expression her mother once had, tired and full of secrets. Wade leaned in, squinting. "Is that you?" Carla stared. I think this is a memory that hasn't happened yet." A crack rippled through the ground. The air split. And then, from the mist, he stepped forward. Elias Brandt. Not monstrous. Not inhuman. Just a man in a coat, barefoot, skin pale like paper, and eyes too deep to see the bottom of. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. "You brought her," he said gently. "You brought the final memory." Carla stood. "I didn't bring anything for you." "Oh," Elias said, his voice a whisper that carried like thunder. "But you did. You brought a version of her that never let go. A version that remembered everything. Every last word. Every last night. The shape of her fingers when she held your pinky in a crowd." He tilted his head. "You kept her alive in your mind. And now she's mine." Carla stepped in front of the ash tree. "You fed on Daniel. You took pieces of him until there was nothing left." Elias nodded once. "He offered her to me. Not her body, her story. He said make her better, and I did. I rewrote her pain. I erased her weakness. But he wanted more. He wanted her back, and to remember her. That was the betrayal." Wade raised his gun again, voice shaking. "She's not yours." Elias smiled this time. "No, Deputy. But she's not yours either." And then, from behind the tree, Mia stepped out. Not the illusion from the cabin. Not the fake smile. The real one. Older now. Maybe 28. Eyes bright with confusion. Hands trembling like someone waking from a long dream. She looked at Carla. "Auntie." Tears poured down Carla's cheeks. "Mia." Elias's voice echoed around them. "You want her back, Carla? You can have her." She turned, eyes narrowing. "What's the price?" Elias spread his arms. "Just one memory. One story. Give me the one that binds you to her." The air went still. Wade whispered, "Don't do it." But Carla already knew. She stepped forward, looked Mia in the eyes. "I remember the first time you laughed," she said softly. "You were 3 weeks old. Your dad had spilled applesauce on himself and started cursing. You thought it was the funniest thing in the world." Mia blinked. I don't remember that." "You wouldn't," Carla said, smiling through tears. "Because I held it for you. I kept it safe." She turned back to Elias. "Take it." And he did. Not with teeth. Not with claws. He just reached out and touched her forehead. In an instant, the memory left her. She felt it unwind from her mind like a ribbon. Not painful, just gone. A space left behind. Mia gasped and stumbled into Carla's arms, suddenly real, suddenly warm, suddenly free. The fog screamed. The forest shuddered. And Elias Brandt was gone. They found the fire road 2 hours later. Wade called for help. The Hollow didn't fight them. It simply let them go. Because it had been paid. 3 months later, Mia lived quietly in a rented house just outside town. She didn't remember everything. Maybe she never would. But every day, she and Carla sat with photo albums and pieced it back together. Daniel was gone. That truth didn't change. But Carla had his journal. And every word she read brought her brother closer. Sometimes at night, Mia would hum in her sleep. A soft tune. The same one she used to hum when she was little. Carla didn't recognize it. But it didn't matter. She was here. And some memories, even if you lose them, still come home.